Right, good morning, Paul. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. Morning, Martin.
Saturday morning. What we're doing?
I have no idea.
I'm sure we said on the last episode that we weren't going to record in the morning, but there you go.
I know.
Let's see where we get to. The reason we're doing a Saturday is because I'm doing some normal work on Monday for old world stuff.
Yeah.
Which is fine. So anyway, I am in my loft and I'm somewhere between a bootstrap startup and a unicorn, Paul.
You know what? So am I. I think we're much closer to the bootstrapped startup than we are the unicorn. But
well, I just thought I'd say that because we've been to Manchester Tech Festival this week.
Yeah. You know, while everyone was talking, I was when he started his talk, and he we'll explain who it was in a minute. And he started mentioning unicorn. I'm not ashamed to admit I was Googling what the hell's a unicorn.
Well, in the preparation of the notes for this, Paul, I thought I'd try and get what a unicorn is right. So it's a £1 billion valuation without being listed on the stock market, Google reliably tells me.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, that.
It is a lot of money. What have you been doing this week, Paul, then? What have we been doing, as well as this festival we went to?
We've been still prepping, launching a product, refining product that we're launching, actually.
Yeah. So we haven't got to launch yet, have we?
No. That looks like a lot like next week now, being as it's Saturday.
I've been doing a little more playing with generative AI. I've been getting incredibly frustrated with Calude.ai.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. So we've said in the past, we used Claude, which is a large language model, to help do all the show notes and sort of analyze mine and Paul's ramblings to try and create some kind of, marketing assets.
Yeah.
This week, Claude, or should I say after last week's record, Claude suddenly decided that it wasn't going to play ball.
Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah. And the reason it gave me is I can't do any of that. So basically, I upload the transcripts of our chat, and then I have a prompt that I paste into Claude, which is to help us generate a description, pull out certain moments, that type of thing. So I uploaded the transcripts, put my prompts in, and it went, "No, I am sorry. I'm an ethical AI, something along the lines of this. I'm an ethical AI, and I can't deal with copyrighted material. So go swivel."
Yeah.
So
did he really say go swivel?
No, it didn't say go swivel at all. So I said, "Well, this isn't copyright material. It's mine. It's mine and Paul's. This is us. So you can do it." And then it said, No, I can't. I need permission from the copyright holder. So, which I replied, "I give you permission."
Yeah.
And it went, "Oh, I still can't do it." And then I nearly lost my mind.
How do you prove to a large language model that you are the copyright holder?
So I eventually managed to convince it to do some little bits. Apparently, the thing it has trouble with is replicating the content verbatim.
Yeah. Right.
So I was asking it to pull out quotes or anything that we'd said that was dodgy, and because it had to replicate some of the transcripts.
Yeah.
Anyway, frustration led me back to ChatGPT's arms.
Well, there we go.
And since last time, I've been very down on ChatGPT. Whatever they've done is brilliant.
Right.
It basically meant I could do all the show notes. Had to change the prompts a little bit, but
right.
You know what? This brought me around to thinking, though. You generate processes on we talked about this before, but you generate processes based on third-party services, and they suddenly change how it works.
Yeah.
So if we'd built an app based on a Claude API call, it'll have suddenly stopped working.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many apps out there have suddenly stopped working.
Oh, quite a few, I should imagine. Yeah, there'll be a lot of people pivoting last week.
I know, going, "Oh my God, it's not working."
Yeah.
And I think this might be because, so you mentioned something to me last week about Katy Perry selling all her stuff.
Oh, yeah.
All her music to Universal.
Yeah.
And it's Universal are currently suing Anthropic. I don't know, this isn't verbatim, so this might be a little bit wrong. But because you can reliably reproduce Katy Perry lyrics.
Right.
On Claude.
Would you want to do that? Who knows?
I don't. I mean, are they her lyrics? Anyway,
yeah, I don't know. I shouldn't badmouth Katy Perry. I think she's pretty good, to be fair.
Yeah. But that's Universal. Apparently, that was the headline anyway.
It's slightly suspicious, though. I think we mentioned it in last week's podcast that Google and Amazon threw money into Anthropic, right?
And then it suddenly stopped working.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Conspiracy theories abound.
Yeah, it's got a bit... We might end up being a bit tinfoil hat today.
Yeah, we might, actually.
I know, I'm feeling a bit tinfoil hat. Maybe it's that Saturday thing.
Yeah.
You know. Whilst we're talking about large language models, just a quick story from this week, because ChatGPT reliably tells me that audiences engage with a personal story. I've been trying to convince my son, I've got a teenage son, and I've been trying to convince him to engage with AI. But I think it's because something that I'm doing, it's something he's definitely not interested in. So you can generate images now inside of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And we were playing with that. And I was like, go on, mate, have a go. Have a go. You basically ask for a picture that you want and it'll generate it. And he was like, really? He was like, yeah, go on, stick something in. So his first ever prompt was, and I quote verbatim, buff guy grating cheese. I'm like, all right. And it generated a couple of images of some buff guys grating cheese. I don't know if that's because he was busy making himself some tea. His second prompt, I've put this up on LinkedIn as well, but his second prompt just made me laugh because I think it's what he thinks of me.
Right.
And his second prompt was, depressed man in his 40s smoking a cigarette in a park alone in the rain on Taco Tuesday.
Amazing.
I'm like, oh dear, is that what you think of me? But, and then he iterated. I was like, you can change stuff about it. And his iterations were, he added a fake moustache and a poncho to the image. And I've put the image that it generated up on LinkedIn.
Amazing.
I'll reshare it on the Meat Puppets one, LinkedIn. But I know describing images on an audio medium is not great.
Well, there's a lot of that in this podcast. If you're not okay with that, I suggest you listen somewhere else.
I'll put a link in the description, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to this week's topic-ish. I'll just read. Do you want to read verbatim what it is? Okay.
AI is back in the normal. # news. Thanks to Rishi and Biden. What's the hashtag there for?
I've got obsessed with hashtags.
Oh, okay.
Misuse of a hashtag there.
Okay, I'll start that again.
Yeah.
AI is back in the normal. # news. Thanks to Rishi and Biden. There is an awful lot being said and a load of money being chucked around. Will we ever see any of it? Interesting.
AI's been everywhere at the moment. It was on James O'Brien and LBC. It's his topic. It was on Newsnight. And you know something's definitely hit the mainstream with Newsnight. It was on the 6 o'clock news. I was proper showing my age. James O'Brien, 6 o'clock news, Newsnight. Jesus, Martin.
I'm going to posit that's why your son doesn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I think you might be right. And it's all around AI safety. So we're going to get into that after this sting. And we're also obviously talking about some new tools that have come out, some new developments that have come out. But we're going to get a little bit political, I think. Yeah. So here comes a sting. And I fixed my button, Paul.
Oh,
ready?
Amazing.
I'm telling you it's going to work. Here we go. Sting.
Go.
Sting.
Go.
Cool. It worked. So, just so you know, when we're recording this, we're using Notion, and we have a kind of little layout of everything we're going to talk about, and we never get through it all. No. But there was one particular story which was quite far down the list, which Paul's moved all the way up to the top of the list.
I have.
So, take it away, Paul.
Oh, okay. So, Google's AI chief says there's a 50% chance that we'll hit AGI in just 5 years. And I think we have mentioned it before, but AGI is the artificial general intelligence. And what that means is as smart as us, if not smarter. And the great hope is that would be open to everyone, just to set the political landscape, right?
Yeah, that is the backdrop to it all, isn't it?
Yeah, and he predicted this well over 10 years ago, and he's doubling down on that. He's sticking with that.
Now, can I just say, over 10 years ago, there was no such thing as Google DeepMind.
No.
When he predicted this. So it wasn't like, if you like, mass AI developments had started to happen. It was very much just like a pipe dreamy type thing.
Yeah.
And probably been discussed by people a lot more neat. I'm going to use a kid's word, neeky.
Right.
A neek is a nerd and a geek slammed together. It definitely wasn't on my radar back then, which kind of ties into what we're going to talk about in a minute of AGI. Is that's when it's surpassed human intelligence.
Yeah.
And how the hell are you going to control something that's more intelligent than you as a species?
Yeah.
I think this was Sam Altman compared it to AGI is not like, it's not more intelligent than a person. It's more intelligent than the entire knowledge and expertise of a global corporation. That's how he described it.
Okay.
So, you know, it would have all that collective expertise and function. And that is quite scary. So by 2028, we're thinking we might have AGI, which has really kicked into action the US and the UK governments, hasn't it?
It has, yes.
So that brings us on to our next story. And I don't know which order to do these in. Maybe we do them in the order that they happened.
Yep, okay.
So Biden, US President, Joe Biden, he's now obviously he's got more power over there as a fellow on his own, but he's issued an executive order.
Oh yes, which we all became familiar with not so long ago.
Yeah. So he said, and I'm just going to paraphrase it all. I could read the whole thing out, but basically, before anyone can release any model to the public, they've got to show it all to the government first.
Right.
There's good parts of it. So, you know, they're saying the reason for this is where we go a bit tinfoil hat. The reason for this is that they're worried about there being biases. You know, everyone's heard the argument about AI being biased towards middle-class white men.
Yep.
You know, in its responses, even in the image generations that you get. Impact on work, which is what Elon's been banging on about. The fact that none of us might need to work ever again, which is a bizarre concept, and I'm sure it's got a lot of people worried and also like happy. What, retire at 15? Amazing. But the main thing is his executive order means that everything's got to go through government and be exposed to government before it ever goes anywhere near the public.
Yep. Which, you know, cues an instant response of this is again a little tinfoil hat that only the haves will have it, and you know, it does fly in the face of what it's supposed to be doing, which is access for everyone. You know,
but I suppose it's whether or not you believe that governments are there for the good of the population, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't really want to go too far down that rabbit hole.
No.
But talking about it more widely, like the bigger models, so the most popular models, so OpenAI are a private for-profit company, and it's their model. And if it starts to get smarter than anyone in government, little caveat, which isn't hard, then... Sorry, Paul.
You said you weren't going to do that, and then I said it wasn't.
I don't know. But then the weird thing is that Sam Altman's said lots of times he wants regulation. And the tinfoil hat argument of this is, I want regulation so all the little companies can't get in there because you'll have to be massive to be able to put in place everything you need to satisfy the regulation.
Yeah. It's hard though, isn't it? Because we don't really know where they're drawing the line. I think, now, I'm going to have to correct me if I'm wrong on this, because we did discuss this, but I'm not sure it was in a podcast that we actually released.
Probably not. Go on.
When we talked about the chemical weapons and biological agents.
No, I don't think we talked about that. I don't think that's been on a released podcast, no.
Okay. Yeah. Should we just quickly dive into that?
Do it, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a an experiment, and I've forgotten the details, so this is totally off the cuff. But there was somebody who was working on viruses in a positive sense.
I'll just say, I'll put a link in the description. This is from a Netflix show called Killer Robots, just to give context. Carry on.
Yeah. And they were working on, some of the big things, curing cancer, all the rest of it. And in their words, in a little experiment, they decided to see what happens if they run it as a bad actor, shall we say. And it was literally like turning positives into negatives in the algorithm, right? So in other words,
I'd love to give this some context.
Yeah.
So they were running this model, which was looking for things to make humans better or cure diseases.
That's a better
and
way
it
of
was
putting
running on what looks like a 2014 iMac.
Yeah.
It wasn't like big. Don't think of big supercomputers. It was this iMac in their office. It was a local model in their office. He said he was asked to contribute to a paper about the threats of AI.
Yeah,
and he said this is why he did it. But just pick up the story from there, Paul. So he changed a 1 which said look for stuff that's great for humans, paraphrasing, to a 0. Which is look for stuff that's bad for humans.
Yeah.
And then he went home
left
for his
running overnight, right?
Yeah, went home for his tea.
Yeah. Came back the next morning, had thousands and thousands of biological agents that were harmful to humans.
And just to add the more gravitas to that is, I think the phrase was, again, I'm paraphrasing, is, so apparently VX gas is one of the most harmful elements that's been generated, nastiest chemical weapons.
Yeah.
And this little 2014 iMac had designed compounds infinitely more deadly to humans.
Yeah. So, going back, it depends where the government are drawing the line. If they're drawing the line around there, then obviously I'm fully in support.
Yeah.
There's
there's this statement, isn't there? There's this like, there's, with every technological advancement, there's good uses and bad uses. Mm-hmm. So like nuclear, there's obviously bad uses, but there's also good uses, and artificial intelligence is exactly the same. There's good use of artificial intelligence, cure cancer, let's say. Yeah. Bad use of artificial intelligence, like kill everybody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'd also say there's good use of human intelligence and there's bad use of human intelligence.
Indeed, yeah.
And I think it's a really hard one, Really, everything can be used for bad.
Yes.
If you got a bad actor. And I suppose what they're trying to work out is whether or not the AI knows the difference between good or bad. Yeah.
Well, with general intelligence, wouldn't you? You'd expect that to come along with it, right?
You would. And there's this other side issue, which is they call alignment. So, so when they're training models, they have this thing called alignment, which is they try and instill human values, whatever that means, into artificial intelligence. So it has an ethics, has a value system, and Anthropic have obviously taken that to the nth degree.
This week, yeah.
This week and made it unusable. It's not just me saying that. If you want to have a look on Reddit, go for it. The difficulty is whose ethics is it aligning with?
Yeah.
And that is such a global question.
Yeah.
Which then brings us on to the next one, a little UK story, but a big story in the UK. Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister of the UK, last week in Bletchley Park, held a AI Safety Summit with the idea of introducing the first AI Safety Institute.
Yes.
And this is meant to be setting standards for the globe on how we use or don't use AI. And in fairness to him, it seemed like most people, even China, were represented there because, like a virus, AI doesn't really respect borders.
No.
So if there's going to be any agreement, it needs to be a global agreement.
Yes.
So Biden wasn't there, but Kamala Harris was. So they did have representations from all over the globe, including China, which I thought was quite crazy.
Yeah.
But they also had Elon Musk.
Yeah. The Bond villain.
The Bond villain. We have to be careful, Paul. Some people might say he's a Bond villain.
Some people might say that, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know any.
So apart from telling everyone that they're definitely not going to have any jobs, that was the main thing that Musk was saying to Rishi. No one's going to have jobs. But I've got a quote here from him that I've written down. So Musk said, I'm not going to try and do his voice. Musk said, I won't do the voice. I won't do the voice. Musk said, I don't know what necessarily the fair rules are, but you've got to start with insight before you do oversight, the billionaire Musk told reporters, adding that a third-party referee could be used to sound the alarm when risks develop.
Yeah.
I look at this two ways. One, it's these companies like passing the buck a little bit and going, we're just doing science. You decide whether it's ethical or not. And if it goes wrong, it's your fault. That's part of me thinks that. But the fact that Musk is there, and now he started his own AI company, but I say in AI terms, Musk's tiny. I know he was part of OpenAI, but he's not anymore.
No, yeah.
So at the end of all this, they all had a chat and they all sort of talked through the dangers and opportunities that AI brings in Bletchley. And then they all kind of came to an agreement on a set of a framework, I think they call it. Do you want to know what the framework is?
Yeah. Well, okay, I know actually. Well, I've got it in front of me, but tell everyone. Yeah.
All right. So the Institute will inform the UK's regulatory framework. So just to be clear, they're not putting regulation in now. Mm-hmm. They're just trying to work out a framework for what the regulation might look like. It will provide technical tools to support governance, like methods to analyse training data bias, verify regulatory compliance, or enable public input into model development. Mm-hmm. I don't know what any of that means.
No.
Doesn't really mean anything, that, does it?
Yeah, I know.
The Institute will share evaluation outcomes and research to inform policymaking in the UK and internationally towards a global AI governance response. It will establish process for responsible information sharing between industry, government, academia, and public to support governance. Okay, so my rather crap reading of this is that they still don't understand Facebook.
Yeah, just get the experts in.
I know, and I mean I do have a built-in like. Anything that involves people putting loads of rules in place, it just gets me back up, even though when they're probably a really good idea.
Yeah.
You know, but you just kind of look at, and this is where we get political, you look at the difficulty, let's say, they've had with most issues. And this feels like an existential issue which requires immense understanding, God knows what expertise.
Yeah. I also think it needs a rapid response, and government are not the best at that.
No. As I say, Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, other social media channels. They don't know what they're doing.
No.
The chances of having regulation in place by 2028, which is apparently when AGI is going to happen, according to the AI chief at Google, there's no chance of them regulating it before then.
No.
And my reading of it is, there is another part, actually. There is another part to the Safety Institute. They've started chucking money about.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, as two founders of a startup is always a good idea.
It's not an insignificant amount either, is it? It's 100 million fund.
100 million quid.
Yeah.
And it's just where that 100 million quid's going to go. My bet would be it's going to go to a load of consultants to consult with government. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
It's not going to be to help startups. It'll probably go to universities as well, I imagine.
They are saying compute access. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I heard they were trying to build, they're building a new supercomputer as part of that as well, aren't they?
Right. Oh, I didn't know that part, yeah.
Yeah, to give people access to compute because we haven't got I think they've got an old 486 sat in the corner at number Downing Street that they've been
using.
using.
And you have to reach out to the big American tech companies, don't you, for big compute, really?
Yeah, you do. So I think that is a good thing. Let's end on a positive. Yeah. That is a good thing. And I don't know if this is actually tied to it, but a while ago we were looking at UK Innovate Fund.
Indeed. Yep.
And we decided against it in the end.
Yes.
Because it felt like it felt like we weren't ready yet.
Yeah.
And it also felt like it was going to be a massive amount of time.
Yes.
To pitch for something that my experience in the TV industry, this is me being cynical again. I already know who's going to get the funding, and it's not going to be me.
That's the short version.
That's the short version. So I decided to disconnect from it, but that might be stupid. So there was this thing launched, and if you're looking at AI in the music industry like we are,
yes,
it actually feels like a really good thing. Yeah. So it's up to 100,000 quid, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
And there's £1 million in the pot.
Yeah.
For companies to develop a project.
Yeah.
And this, I think, this is probably a good way to tell people exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah, indeed.
So this is the criteria, which I think fits us perfectly.
I'll just chip in the creative catalyst, AI in the music industry. Yep.
That would have been a good place to start, Martin.
Yes, it would.
That's the title.
I did click the link and saw the government start page and went, oh.
I know. It does make you do that, doesn't it? Start your application now. That little green box that says "Start your application now." Your heart sinks, doesn't it?
He's just like, this is a world of pain.
Yeah, this is. Yep. There goes me week and me month.
Yeah.
At least you got ChatGPT to help you write it now. So
yeah.
I don't know if you're allowed to do that, but anyway. So your project can focus on one or more of the following. Assistive generative AI is a collaborative creator tool to benefit the value chain. That's just creating stuff that's going to help people make music.
Yeah, or money.
Or money. Yeah, or money.
Yeah.
Opportunity to improve metadata for discovery. For example, deep learning, enabling collaborations across right holders, music publishers, which is exactly what we've been banging on about for ages.
Indeed, yeah.
Data integrity for machine learning, where data is robust, reliable, and accessible to benefit and address the needs across the ecosystem. That means nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ties into the compute above. I think they're angling towards that, aren't they? A UK-based server farms, basically.
Yeah. And then this probably ties into the AI Safety Institute. Transparent AI algorithm development with a focus on bias reduction, ethical approaches to content generation, and fairness.
Yeah.
Harnessing AI for artist-first creativity and new forms of licensing and artist or fan creativity.
New forms of licensing, that's really interesting. Well, that's a main topic of ours.
Yeah. Licensing is in a mess.
Yeah.
We discussed this last week. But also that fan creativity, that YouTube thing that they're launching, where you can, generate your own covers for playlists, but also they're talking about licensing big artists' voices so users can make their own songs.
Yeah.
Maybe that 1 million quid's already gone.
Yeah. You know what, though? You know the line above which says focus on bias reduction?
Yeah.
I don't want unbiased music. I want my music to be extremely biased one way or the other. Okay,
now we're going to move on to the Tech Festival, Manchester Tech Festival. We talked about it a little bit.
Yes.
And this is 4 days based across 2 sites in Manchester where the tech community come together and talk about stuff. And then loads of established tech companies come and try and sell their wares. Is that a fair way of describing it?
Yeah, I mean, they sponsored it, didn't they? So that's fair enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went down because we thought we should probably try to be part of the community rather than just me hiding in my loft and you hiding in your spare room.
Yeah.
So I'd say the pair of us, I would say, are not the best networkers.
That's fair. Yeah.
I think we do walk in very balanced with a chip on both shoulders going, "What is this?"
Yeah.
What is this rubbish? Why are these people here?
Yeah. But we gave it a shot.
I mean, to be fair, I quite liked it.
Yeah, it was pretty good. To be honest with you, it was good.
Yeah.
I did learn a fair amount as well.
Yeah. So I imagine they've got loads of legacy stuff online, so you can see what actually happened.
Yeah.
One observation, because again, discovery is one of the things we're talking about a lot at the moment, and how do you stand out from the noise? And we both walked into this exhibition hall. So if you imagine people at trestle tables around the edge of an old factory room, which is actually an old swimming pool in Manchester, and they've all got those pop-up signs with inspirational messages on it.
Indeed.
Like, technology for good. Or, and we walk
Sustainable technology is a big one.
Sustainable technology for good.
Yeah.
And we walked round the entire circumference, and even after watching their little videos, which had more inspirational, motivational statements on, I didn't have a clue what any of them did.
No, we literally had to resort to walking up to him and ask him, so what is it you do? And 90% of the time, it's still unclear.
But they had trouble telling us what they did.
Yeah, I know.
You know, it was really difficult, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the tech world, is it? All right.
But maybe that's, this kind of goes back into what people are buying is when people invest in companies.
Yeah. We should mention there was venture capital representatives.
There were.
So there's a bit of salesmanship going on from everyone.
Yeah. As ever with any event, the food was massively overpriced. £6.50 for some chips and gravy.
I know. I paid £5 for a bacon barm cake. I mean,
wow. Wow. Yeah. And it's only a couple of years old, the Manchester Festival, but we did go to a couple of talks. They were running a sessions called I think it was called Startups for Growth or something.
Yeah, Startup Scale Up.
Startup Scale Up. They had a better title than me.
Yeah.
Startup Scale Up was the better thing there, and we stayed for like 3 speakers, which is a record for us.
Yes,
I would say. Paul was itching to get out by 10 o'clock. I have to say it starts at 9:30. And I don't know who you want to talk about. I was just going to.
I want to talk about Lee Chase.
All right, go on then. Talk about Lee Chase. Go on.
Yeah, it was amazing. I don't know what it was. It was about scaling up and quantum physics, and also some ducks. Sorry, I did find it literally fascinating. There was a lot of things in there that I thought about afterwards, and I'm still thinking about, to be honest. I need to chase them up, actually, because I wanted to see if they'd actually published his presentation. Maybe
it was
if
amazing.
They have, we could put it in the links,
Yeah. And the difficulty is, I know it was an amazing presentation, but now I'm failing to know what he talked about.
Yeah. I was kind of clear-ish while he was going on about it, and then some of the concepts were so deep. I should mention Lee is he works in the cybersecurity realm.
Yeah.
It was quite fascinating. I think he's done government work and GCHQ and all the rest of it.
Yeah. He's a data scientist, I think.
Yeah.
I think what we could say is the first was from a guy called Lee Chase Roke, and he talks a lot about ducks and farming and a load of technical stuff that I had no way of ever understanding. But I came out at the end of it really glad that we'd gone.
Yeah. I don't know how useful that is to anyone, but if you get a chance to go see him talk, do.
Yeah. So the second speaker was a lady called Susan Engel, and she was talking about going from startup to maturity.
Yeah.
And I've been in talks like that before, and it's always the talk of, you start, there's like maybe 5 of you all kind of do everything, you all chat every day, you all know what's going on. And then suddenly when you're like 15, 20, 50 people, none of that works anymore.
No.
And we experienced this in a traditional industry, didn't we? In our old business.
Yeah, we did.
And you suddenly find you've got to have... It was this really weird, difficult middle bit where you've got enough people to have systems, but not enough people to implement the systems.
Yeah.
And it's really, really difficult. And I found this difficult because having spent most of my life freelance... The idea of hiring people who aren't serving your clients to directly generate revenue was a bizarre concept.
Yeah. And you have a mix of staff, don't you, at that point? The ones who've been there from the start, who have been on the mission and quite excited about it, you know, to the people who just want a job. I mean, I think that's a little bit unfair. I'm somewhat confused by it. Just tell me what to do. Well, stuff.
The stuff, yeah. Stuff. Do stuff. Can you not just do stuff? Do good stuff. But the thing that struck me there was, so every bit of growth she defined, or in that talk anyway, was about people.
Yes.
Was about going from, 5 people to 50 people to 500 people to loads of different sites. And I don't know about you. God, there we go. We're having an existential conversation on a podcast. It's definitely not what I want.
No.
Managing 200 people.
Yeah. No.
It's not my idea of growth.
But you should make some good points about that, though, didn't she? I think the thing I liked about that was... because one thing that we didn't really do was that before you scale up, make sure you're lean.
Yeah.
And then you can put the people in place to deal with the scaling up, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. One of the big things I took away from that was there's loads of... When you're a small team, you can really get away without documenting process, without putting systems in place, because you can just chat.
Yeah.
And that is what will cause you all the problems down the line.
Yes.
Because all of the knowledge is contained in like 4 people's heads. It's never been documented.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes round to, getting out of the business becomes almost impossible.
Yeah.
Because it's in your head. There was some good from that. I'll let you talk about Patrick. This is the third thing we went to.
Well, this is the unicorn.
Yeah. Well, he wants to be a unicorn.
He wants to be a unicorn, yeah. Patrick wants to be a unicorn.
He wasn't called Patrick Unicorn. He was called Patrick Smith.
Yes, from Zally.
From Zally. I'll let you go. You go, Paul.
So he's got a bold mission, and what Patrick wants to do is get rid of passwords completely. And he didn't go into it in great detail, but he's talking about building a unique identity from your online behavior and how you interact with apps and things like that, and this becomes your password, which is
it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah,
and like he felt different from everybody else in there.
Yeah,
and he
a little
felt
bit rock
close.
Star, I would say.
Yeah, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but he felt a lot more like the stereotype of what a tech startup founder is.
Yeah.
Just the way he held himself, the way he carried himself.
Yeah.
The bold missions.
Yeah.
That he was doing. And you know what we haven't said, actually? We should give some examples of what unicorns are.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
So examples that people will know are Uber, Stripe.
Yep.
SpaceX, which is Elon's company. WeWork, shared office space. And another one, which if you're of a younger generation, you'll definitely know, is Epic Games.
Yeah.
Who did Fortnite.
Yeah.
And I suppose what all of them achieved is they managed to become part of our everyday lives. Like my mum and dad know what Uber is.
Yeah.
I remember getting Uber when they first appeared in London. We were at some bizarre awards event and we needed to get to a hotel that was really far out of London because we couldn't afford the posh hotel. And at this event, they gave out a load of tickets to this thing called Uber.
Yeah.
And then from then on, I've never stopped using it. It was just so convenient, so instant. And I think it's something that does that mass market appeal. And if you could say to people, and I think he's onto a good thing here, is you never need to remember your password again.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one that's just convenience for people like us. But then, there's this idea that if you're a bit older, I don't know about don't know about your relatives, but my elderly relatives have real trouble with passwords, remembering them, writing them down.
Yeah, and also the safety of them. They tend to be easily rememberable. Memorable.
Yeah,
memorable. Yeah.
So he had some. Now he too, Zali. He too had some of these pop-up posters in the conference room.
Yeah,
but he was a bit different to all the other ones.
Yes, he was. Yeah, they weren't really selling anything. I do have to say as well. It was really interesting the way he did it. It was quite, he'd put some hooks in, because when we walked into the room, I did spot his couple of banners that he's got up. And like you said, what do these guys do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What is this? Which made it really interesting. I thought, I've got to go and find out what they do. But one of the banners was about the Minuteman missiles in the USA. So there was a presidential order, and the Minuteman missile was a nuclear response. And the idea behind the Minuteman missile was that they were quick to launch, and this is back in the Cold War days.
Yeah.
And then there was I think it was an executive order, quite topical, from the president, who decided that probably quite sensibly, we should have a password to launch these missiles. And the generals, in their infinite wisdom, wanted that password to be easy to remember and quick to type, so that they could actually launch them in a minute. And the password was 6 zeros.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You see, there is an argument for AGI, because the stupid bit in all of this is humans, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know. It's I can see both arguments though. The missiles are coming. Launch. What's the password? I don't know.
Yeah. Try it with an exclamation mark on the end. That's what you need to do. No, it's Martin 2. It's Martin 2, this one. Or your date of birth.
Yeah.
A favourite one is for years, and I'm sure you've been here. If anyone remembers landlines, passwords and PIN codes were always the last 4 digits of your mum and dad's telephone number.
Yeah.
If it is yours, change it now. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I might have mentioned this before, but I use a password service, to remember all the passwords. And every year they publish the worst passwords, like the least safety. And in the UK, there's an awful lot of football teams.
Yeah, bet there is.
Man United 01.
Yeah, exclamation mark.
Yeah.
What I did notice at this tech festival, there wasn't an awful lot of AI, which surprised me.
No, there wasn't.
There was people asking about it.
Yeah.
And the type, there was all sorts of people there from what I say is really established kind of corporate businesses.
Yeah.
Who are offering traditional services, but in the tech world, i.e., we'll update your tech stack, or we'll update your Windows 98 machine.
Yeah.
There was that, but there was also, there was one chap we bumped into who's a lawyer who's just quit and decided he wants to run headlong into AI, and that's where he turned up. So it was encouraging to see that there's other people as silly as us there.
Yeah, doing that kind of thing. Yeah, I just want to say when you mentioned your tech stack, there was another phrase I learned, which is tech debt, which I guess ties into when you're scaling up. And tech debt was about the cost it would be further down the line to update your technology. And we're kind of thinking about this a lot, aren't we? Because we've done this in the past, and like a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, we kind of based everything on Google Drive.
Yeah.
So, we've got spreadsheets for tracking projects and things of where we are. And then as you scale up, you need more robust systems in place, and there's a kind of cost to replace these further down the line. I had a bit of trouble with this because you're supposed to evaluate your tech debt at a certain point, and keep an eye on those costs. And as we talk about a lot on this podcast, I'm really confused about how you do that when new technologies are going to be reducing your tech debt or to nothing almost in some cases,
Yeah, so like a really simple thing that's happened over the last couple of weeks. You might so say you want generative AI world. You need a service to generate your pictures, and then you need an LLM chatbot. So that's maybe two services. So say you've gone Midjourney and ChatGPT, two most popular ones, maybe £20 a month each, something like that. And now you can do all your images inside ChatGPT.
Yep. Now I did ask my partner about this because this is very much her world.
Yeah.
Because she does a lot of these actual tech debt evaluations and things like that. And the answer she gave me was, you just evaluate on the day. Not literally on the day, but at the time you're doing the evaluation, you only take into account the technology that exists.
Yeah.
So it seemed that again, though, I wasn't satisfied with that, but because again, you're like that. Okay, so I have to keep doing that constantly. So there's another task. Mm-hmm.
But isn't it evaluating the tech that exists, but also evaluating where you think that ecosystem is going to go?
Yeah, well, yeah, it is, but I think that's the really difficult part. Who envisaged? August last year, AI was not a thing.
Yeah,
I was making the example of. I did mention Google Drive and spreadsheets. We've done a lot of spreadsheet wrangling.
Yeah,
and we never really had a spreadsheet specialist, which in my partner's company, she has a lot of spreadsheet specialists because they do some real tricky things with them,
Yeah.
But now it's really lo-fi and from what artificial intelligence can do for you. But if you want formulas to do whizzy-bang spreadsheets, it takes seconds. You just ask ChatGPT and it's done.
I know. So I wonder if they're going to do this thing. So your spreadsheet specialists essentially become redundant. ChatGPT's replaced them. Yeah. And then OpenAI changed their algorithm and you can no longer do that.
Yeah. Very interesting. I mean, that's the thing.
Or jack the price up from $20 to £500. Yeah. Don't know why I changed between dollars and pounds in that analogy, but there you go. Who knows what the exchange rate is?
Global thinking, well done.
Yeah, exactly. For 20 yen, no idea.
Don't know how much that is.
No, I don't either.
How much is 20 yen?
But it does worry me that they'll just switch it off. And I really worried about this when we took on Google, which it's probably 12 years ago now.
Yeah.
We switched everything to Google Drive. I just thought...
It's 11 pence, Martin. It's 11 pence.
11 pence, okay. At Paul, I'm predicting the stock market here.
Right, okay. All right, good.
Yeah. But, I was really worried because if Google just decide not to give me access to my data, I'm done.
Yeah. We used to rather paranoidly every couple of months download everything, didn't we?
Yeah. I never looked at it. I've still got those backups. I've never opened them.
Right, yeah.
Right, we've done enough tinfoil hat stuff. We're just going to go and move on just to some quickfire product stuff because that was a while.
It was a while. Sting.
Okay. Everything seems to have hit an iterative stage.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of less new stuff.
Yes.
More and more developments of existing stuff.
Yeah.
So there's kind of some, there's some leaders appearing in all different markets.
Yeah.
And I think what we'll go through is stuff that affects our old industry. So there's video, image, audio, music generation.
Yeah. Can we just really, really quickly, my favourite story that's on this list that's got nothing to do with any of that. Really,
okay, go on.
Is the Doritos devises AI-powered crunch cancellation tech for gamers.
It's audio.
I suppose it is audio, yeah. I suppose it is.
Advertising.
Yeah, and advertising, yeah, I suppose it is. I just couldn't stop laughing. I just love the whole campaign.
Let's go straight in onto that. Obviously, there'll be a link in the description, and they've done but this is the idea that the biggest pet hate of gamers is hearing other users crunch Doritos when they're just about to make that no-scope shot.
And now they've said that a lot more gamers will be crunching on Doritos to put everybody else off.
Talking about this, though, I think Doritos have just wanted to put AI in a story to be relevant. Because it's just noise cancelling, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it.
I suppose strictly it is AI, but it's not really.
Yeah. I think they've trained it on crunch, And
they've got their own model to get rid of that specific. Does it work for all flavours?
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if what it's doing, it must have all flavours, did you just say?
Yeah,
Sorry, I went right over my head.
Yeah, does it work for all flavours of Doritos?
I love it. It's just hilarious.
That's coming in a future firmware update.
Yeah, sorry, we forgot spicy, whatever they are. Tangy cheese, we forgot them. Yeah, they did definitely want to put AI in it, no question. I think I can work out what it's doing, though,
Yeah, go on.
Because how I'm gonna geek out for a minute, or what was it? Neek.
Yeah.
Neek out for a minute. So they must have, because how noise cancellation works very quickly. It rotates the phase of incoming signals. Do I need to go deeper on that? Or
I'd just say this. Basically, it creates the audio opposite of the sound you want to get rid of, thus cancelling it out to the silence.
Yes. Good. That's good. So they must have trained it on all sorts of crunch so that it can flip the phase when it hears some crunch. Yeah. Sorry. I love it. And get rid of the crunch. Amazing.
Well, thank God for Doritos.
Just brilliant.
But I think, that's, AI is now. If Doritos are getting in on the game.
Yep.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
It's worth a look. I love the image at the top as well. So we'll definitely put that link in the description.
Okay, you've messed up my order now, but I'm gonna. It's all right. I was gonna do all audio stuff together, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. All right.
It's all right. I'm gonna jump back to so Runway ML.
Yeah.
We spoke about those over a couple of weeks, and they ran a big film competition for people to make films entirely inside AI. And when I say films, I mean trailers for films.
Yep. Was that the one we told people about after it was closed?
Yes. So it's all right. They've released the winners now.
Good.
And you know what? I watched the first 5 of them, and I'm sorry to say, I was really unimpressed.
Oh.
And I think this is trying to force some new technology to do what existing technology does really well.
Right, yeah.
And because you're comparing it to stuff that you've seen, and I know it'll get better. I mean, all you have to do is look at DALL-E from a year ago to the images you're getting now. And I'm sure video will do the same thing. But from the actual competition, I think because people were trying to really ape what had gone before, ape their favourite film or...
Yeah.
And because it's not their favourite film, it just feels bad. It's amazing, but as a viewing experience, you're just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In saying that, they have just released a new update to their model, which they're calling Gen2, which really should be called Gen3 now. So, but I think it's about to turn that corner. And I won't say much more about it. We'll put a link in the description to what they're generating. And I'll also put a link into the description. Someone made a fake, David Attenborough Natural History type trailer.
Yeah.
And using Runway Gen 2 and 11 Labs to do the voice. And it is pretty incredible, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
If probably anatomically incorrect for a natural history program. But again, as we've said before, I can see this being used for B-roll. But what I want to see is, where are the people doing weird stuff? Where's the strange music videos? Where's the what music videos used to do, which was take some new technology, do something weird with it because no one knew what to do with it. And then suddenly you've got this new standard that ended up in adverts 6 months later.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that, because I'm looking at it. We are looking at it ourselves, but there is undeniably a look. I'm talking about Stable Diffusion at the moment, which isn't Runway, but there's an undeniable look, and some of the things that come out of it are crazy. And that in itself, I think really needs exploring. There is a race to try and make it look as real as possible, And
I think that's the wrong thing to do, personally.
At the moment, definitely, yeah.
It feels really boring. It's like, we can already do that.
Yeah.
Why are we doing it again? I know we can do it cheaper, great, but...
Yeah.
Let's do something else, do something new. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so it brings me on to my next progression. I don't know if we talked about this on an unreleased podcast. For those who maybe are just joining us now, episode 1 took us about 4 episodes of recording to be confident enough to put anything out, and maybe it's gone downhill since then.
Yeah, maybe we should do that.
Maybe we should
Patreon
do that
thing and do like anyone who joins can listen to the awful podcast that we put.
Yeah, we should do that. That's in 12 months, Paul, when we got an audience. Listen to the first unfiltered recording. Anyway, brings me on to another iteration. There's an app we talked about a little while ago, as I said, called Luma AI. And I'm going to sound so middle class now. It's the main reason I bought an iPad, because they only had an iOS app.
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't bring myself I needed a new phone. I couldn't bring myself to get an iPhone. So, but basically they used to do this thing. I don't know if anyone's heard of nerfs, but put simply is using your phone or your iPad. It was limited to iOS at the time. You could just move your camera around an object and it would generate a 3D model of that object. And it was pretty crude,
Yeah.
But without getting too technical about it, the thing that Luma AI had was that the lighting felt right, whatever angle you were looking at it from. And without going super technical about it, and the problem that a lot of these things have is when you take a picture of something, obviously it's lit by the light in the room. So then if you change the angles, everything feels wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So they were doing this thing. And there's been this, if you want to type into YouTube, this is not a dangerous search, Gaussian Splats. It's a new method of doing this. And I think what it, without getting into the detail of it, it's a really quick and efficient way of generating 3D objects that you can use inside all sorts of 3D programs.
Yep.
Really, really quickly and at really high quality.
Yeah.
And it feels like a little bit of an arms race. So there's 2 stories from Luma, actually. So they've launched an Unreal Engine plugin. So Unreal Engine is a place you can go and build games, do 3D graphics, all that kind of stuff. And it means that use case would be, so say I wanted this cup that's in front of me to be in the scene in inside Unreal, I could just grab my phone, scan the cup, drop it in.
Yeah.
And then I could relight it inside Unreal and it'd look great. So, I know, and it does look incredible, these Gaussian splats.
A few years ago, that was an impossible dream.
Yeah. And I just want to let's talk about the app itself and what it enables you to do now. For me, it's you think of societal implications of stuff, and you think about unicorns, as we were talking about before. I've always wanted to get into 3D printing.
Yeah.
And the amount of times I've almost bought a 3D printer,
yeah,
and then just gone, oh, they're not there yet. Oh, they're not there yet. Oh, I can't do 3D design.
Yeah.
But there's a few things that are happening here, which will take me on to the next story. So, Luma AI launched this free app where you could scan stuff and it would make 3D models. What they were doing there was getting loads of training data for something else that they've created, which is text to 3D.
Yes.
So you type, I want to see a 3D image of a cup. Go.
Yep.
And it gives you this image, and you can take it and use it in any 3D program. Yeah. It's got a texture on it, and these textures are getting better and better. For me, it's like, God, just imagine you could type a bit of text, create me a cover for my Stream Deck. And then you've got a 3D printer on the side, and you just go print.
Yeah.
And then add into that the scanning ability. Okay, so here's my Stream Deck. I'm going to scan it. the computer now knows exactly how big it is, whatever I need for it, and I can just print myself something straight off it. And I know that might be a few years off.
Yeah.
But to me, in sort of consumer goods like that, or augmentations to gear that you buy, I think the knowledge barrier is disappearing there. That really excites me.
Yeah, I think that's I think there are wider implications. Because for some reason, maybe it's because having worked on the house, but my head went to builders and building.
Yeah,
measurements for rooms, and or just printing something that you might need, plumbing components.
So, do you want me to go full tinfoil hat?
Yeah.
So,
of course.
So, after I read my last book on AI, which was Mustafa Suleyman's The Coming Wave, I went straight on to this synthetic biology book.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, about growing organisms.
Which is happening, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not happening in labs. People are doing it at home.
Yeah, you could buy a home kit for 25 grand.
I know.
To grow your own animal.
Yeah, that's scary. Coupled with what we were talking about earlier with viruses and things like that. I mean, no.
But what they go on about the synthetic biology book is so it's massively oversimplified, right? The code to make everything's DNA, right?
Yeah.
They've managed to digitize most of DNA.
Oh, that's what Lee talks about. In the presentation, he did talk about if you don't think everything can be broken down to simple instructions. He talks about the base pairs of DNA and how
is there 4
everything comes from it. Yeah, 4,
and everything is built right. So hold that in your head.
Yeah.
Imagine, and I don't know if this is true or not. I think they've managed to digitize most of the DNA sequence. So they've managed to express that in ones and zeros.
Yeah.
And you take that with the ability to grow synthetic biology. And this is where I go full tinfoil hat, Paul.
Yeah.
And it's in this book. It's from the synthetic biology book. But I'm going to grow my house. I'm going to grow a sofa. I know you think I'm mad.
Yeah, dude, what do you want an organic sofa for? Oh, the sofa needs watering or something. No. No, feed the sofa. Have you fed the sofa today?
Okay.
Sorry. An organic sofa. Where did you get that from?
I didn't say organic. I said synthetic.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. Can I just ask you, how big is your 3D printer? Oh, God. Can't get over it.
I might have to cut this bit out, Paul. I might have to self-censor. I'm not expressing it correctly.
Do me.
All right.
Love it. Right, okay.
So Paul clearly thinks I'm mad with synthetic biology, and
you're probably onto something there. Sorry, I just can't get over it.
You sound so sarcastic.
Yeah.
Wow. After this call, we'll be having a shareholders meeting, and I'll be out.
Oh,
I can see it happening.
No, I love
anyway,
it. Let's go.
So Luma, I've got Gaussian Splatting where you can just scan in 3D objects, but then also you can do text to 3D creation. Shut up, Paul. Shut up.
Sorry, this properly got me. Let's get in touch with him. Oh, good. Right, sorry, I'm back. Right, excuse me. Oh, you killed me.
There is something massive, groundbreaking, huge that has happened in the world of AI.
Go on.
You ready for it?
Yeah.
AI has been named Word of the Year by the Collins Dictionary.
It's not a word.
It's true that. So it's named after it's 2 words. Well,
It's an acronym. Yeah.
So from their press release, well, it's on the BBC anyway, old man. Okay. Collins Dictionary has named artificial intelligence as its word of the year for 2023. Right. It's
amazing.
It's words of the year.
Okay.
Use of the term AI has quadrupled this year, and it's becoming a topic of major discussion. Yes. Yeah. Collins said AI has quickly become ubiquitous and embedded in everyday life like email or streaming.
Yeah.
Okay, and there were other contenders. There were other contenders for word of the year, Paul.
Go on.
Do you want to know what I was up against?
What was it up against?
Bazball. I don't even know what that is.
I don't know what that is. No.
Canon event. Don't know what that is. Debanking. So that was the Nigel Farage stuff.
Oh, yeah.
De-influencing.
Oh, right. Okay.
Greedflation.
No, I haven't heard any of these.
You must have heard of greedflation.
No.
Yeah, where they just put the price up and blame it on the fact that stuff's just more expensive.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know it was a word. I've been saying the phrase. I shall now use that word.
Ultra processed.
Right.
And ULEZ. So I think it's fair to say it didn't have much competition, is what I'm saying.
It didn't. It didn't. I've just asked ChatGPT about. I've just asked it, is artificial intelligence a word?
What does it say?
It says the term artificial intelligence, AI,
is copyrighted and I can't tell you anything about it.
Yeah, no.
Go on. Sorry, go on.
Is indeed a word, or more accurately, a phrase composed of two words.
So I love the fact that the Collins Dictionary has named artificial intelligence as its word of the year. That's just hilarious.
It is.
Anyway, do you want to know? Lastly, do you want to know what last year's was?
Go on.
Permacrisis.
Oh. Okay.
And do you want to have a guess at what 2020's was?
But something to do with the pandemic.
Lockdown.
Yeah, right, yeah.
There we go. So, big news, biggest AI news of the year. Collins Dictionary has named artificial intelligence its word of the year for 2023.
It's not a word, it's a phrase. I've lost all faith in Collins Dictionary. I'm not reaching for that anymore. Definitely going for the Oxford.
So there you go. Now, normally we'd jump out and we'd go and do a little bit of a deep dive into a product. And we've been playing around with a few products this week, which are really in the area that we're wanting to create our own products in, which is in music and audio.
Yeah, probably deserves its own episode, that.
Yeah, and I was going to say that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a really, really long, deep dive into audio products that are out there and the different generators. So on that note, we're going to go out to a sting, have a quick talk about what we're going to do this week, and then we'll finish it there.
Yep.
All right, here we go. So, I'm not sure how much Biden and Rishi and all that shenanigans is really going to affect us. It remains to be seen, really.
It does, yeah.
And I think our biggest challenge, at the moment, is working out what our tech stack is.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about Google Drive before,
about
whether or not we're going to, use it. We're definitely not sticking with it. We're on Notion at the moment. And just to paint a picture, my son was out at his mate's house last night. My missus was out with her mates. I was sat in trying to understand relational databases.
Exciting.
Which, oh God, I depressed myself. But I think I think relational databases is the future of us organising what we need to do.
Yes.
But then I just think I'm building all this stuff on Notion at the moment, and I know they're a relatively new company, but it's just like, I hope they don't decide just to stop because I've just wasted all this time.
Yeah.
And I suppose that is going to be the difficulty for us, I think.
Yep. Well, one thing about a database is it's fairly robust processes for getting all the information out and into another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AI, here you go. Here's a prediction. AI will not replace databases. Bet it does. Bet it does.
Cut to announcement tomorrow.
Databases are gone.
Yeah.
There's this new thing, that a word we don't even know for thing, and we don't know how it works, but it's great. Use it, everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know about any upcoming I dates. I'm just going to say I every time instead of AI now. Google's Alphabet's new model, Gemini, isn't out yet.
No.
Keep on getting told that we should expect that soon.
Yep.
We're going to be doing various sprints this week to try and get our bloody product launched.
We are.
And we are having an in-person meeting to discuss relational databases.
We are indeed. Yeah. And refining the tech stack once again.
Can we not say something to make ourselves sound cooler?
No.
No, we can't. Okay. All right, Paul. Well, on that note, it just leaves me to say you'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. As Paul says, that is weird because you're already listening to it, so you've already got your podcasts.
Yeah.
But we are also, you'll find us on YouTube, the Meat Puppets podcast on YouTube. You'll find us on Twitter, at Meat Puppets Pod. And excitingly, you'll find us on LinkedIn.
Ooh.
And on that bombshell,
any hopes of doing anything cool just went right out the window.
We're on LinkedIn, guys. Yeah, talking about right. On that note, goodbye, Paul.
Bye.
Bye.